Welcome to the 38th Wharf call. This is potentially the last one for a little while. Um, the project is kind of in its final stages being wrapped up, at least from the milestone perspective. Our team is going to be doing a little bit of planning and completely reshuffling things in December, as well as, December being the holiday season, having some time off. So, yeah, we will not have these scheduled for a little bit. But the plan is to kind of figure out how we weave Wharf into calls moving into next year and how we either keep this as part of the developer roundtable. If we still have maybe monthly Wharf calls, we're not entirely sure yet. It's part of the planning we are planning on doing. A little redundant, but just updates, I guess, at the beginning. We're looking into a lot of little odds and ends right now. There's some weirdness going on with the error handling in Chrome specifically. If you're in Telegram today, you may have noticed some discussion about that. When you're defining an action using the antelope library, and if there's a missing field, all it does is outputs the type of field that's missing. It'll say like there's a name missing or something, but it doesn't exactly tell you which name. And in a very complicated action, like that's hard to debug to know which one of them is actually undefined. If you use Firefox or Safari or Brave or any other browser, the error message actually does display that. So Chrome is doing something stupid, collapsing the error message somehow and removing that information. So we've been researching that this morning so far. Yesterday we had a kind of a fix in just by appending the string to the message itself. Not sure which direction we're going to go, but we definitely want to make sure that developers that are using Chrome's developer tools are going to have that information as opposed to just like asking you to go play hide and seek with a variable. Um, I it's been a frustrating issue even for me for a long time. Like it doesn't give enough information, and I had no idea that if I just switched to a different browser, it would have worked. So we're still learning things about this as well. But so yeah, that's coming. That's kind of been a little bit of our focus over the past 48 hours or so. Um, the tutorial contract and the tutorial itself, the front end is kind of in a good state. I think we have 9 chapters right now for the tutorial, going through different aspects like setting up Wharf in general, creating a testnet account, embedding the session kit, getting logins working, using the command line tool to generate contracts, implementing the contract kit, and then reading and writing data are separate chapters. We're adding one right now for action return values. I think that would be kind of a good late chapter in the tutorial that's like, hey, if you use this feature in your smart contract, which we'll have in the tutorial contract, um, you can just get back the data you need immediately when you submit the transaction instead of having to query again afterwards. I know we talked about that last week on this call, and then we talked about it yesterday in the Antelope roundtable in the developers chat. So along with that, there's some stuff coming on the session kit side. It doesn't look like I've even pushed it to GitHub yet. But the session kit, let's see if the docs help here. When you call transact, we don't talk about the transact response a whole lot, it doesn't look like. The response that comes back from the transact method is now going to have a new field. Right now it's called returns, or maybe we'll change it to return values or something. But this result right here, when you call transact, is now going to also have an array of objects, and the objects will contain the contract, the action name, as well as the return value that action returned for you. This information was available to you before. You could call results.response, I believe, and then dig through the API response to actually find the return values. But we're just pulling those and surfacing them a little bit closer to the top of the result itself. Those will also be automatically typed. So if the return type is, like in our example with the tutorial, it's going to be a row. It's going to be a to-do row. And the value itself in this new array will automatically be converted so that like the name types are names, the integers are the proper integer types, all of that. It's not actually going to be a struct because we can't dynamically create structs on the fly, which is kind of unfortunate. But at least all of the data will be native antelope types as it's coming back. This is going to result in a session release of 1.2. We'll be pushing that out probably before the tutorial, but maybe around the same time. And I don't think there's going to be any other changes in that version of the session kit, but it'll at least make and expose return values and make them a little bit more easy to work with rather than iterating over the array and trying to dig them out yourself. So what else? The website, still working on the last few parts of that. There's a new plugin section coming to the website that will surface all of the various plugins that you can currently find on GitHub, but it'll put them all into this new section. It'll be searchable, it'll be categorized, so you'll be able to click like wallet plugins and see all the wallet plugins. This is going to be currently just baked into the website through, I believe we're using like TOML or some sort of syntax to bake it into the website repository. There's a backend service that runs for the search. If people want to add their own plugins, they'll have to just do it through a PR. We will be the ones kind of gatekeeping that for the time being. So we will do our best to make sure that those get approved in a timely manner. But if you submit something and it doesn't get approved, feel free to ping us. We've always had problems with GitHub notifications actually making it to us. I don't know whether it's GitHub's notifications are just bad or maybe they're just drown out and all the other activity. Command line tool, another thing that's getting updated. We've discovered some issues with variants in the atomic assets contract that gets outputted by it. This came up because of the atomic assets library that we're working on. We noticed that the code gen was not working for those types of variables. So the command line tool is getting some bug fixes for that. It's also getting some bug fixes for struct names. Right now, it's not respecting the case sensitivity of the struct name. I think it's just lower casing them or something. There's a PR waiting right now to merge that makes it so that we just respect whatever's in the ABI. I'm sure I'm missing a couple things, but all of this goes to show that there's lots of little odds and ends that are being tied up right now. This is all kind of based on feedback and people using these tools and finding these issues. We're planning on continuing to do this for many months forward, and we'll also probably find some of this stuff on our own and be issuing updates based on our experiences with them. An example of that is like we're working on the tutorial. We found that it was more complicated than it needed to be to work with the return values. And so we're going to release a new version of the session kit to make that easier to deal with. So yeah, I think we're in this point where we are mostly feature complete, with a few releases coming in the not too distant future to round out some of the stuff that's part of the project roadmap. And beyond that, it's kind of moving into maintenance, planning, what's next, and making sure we can resolve the issues that the developers who are now using this tool for their applications run into. So it's been a long, long road, but it's pretty cool to see it all come together. Yeah, so that's it, I think, in terms of updates. New versions coming out. If you end up running into these and report something, we may just have to tell you to upgrade. That's fine too. Starter kits, I guess, are the other piece that's still yet to be released. We're pretty far along in those though, so those won't be too far behind. Um, yeah, and I guess in terms of updates, that's really about it. We have kind of a very much listener audience today. I don't know if there's any topics you guys want to dive into specifically or continue on with from some of our previous conversations. Um, yeah, we're open to that kind of stuff. Otherwise, maybe today is kind of a short one. So give it a moment to see if anybody has anything to chime in with. The question was multi-sig when. Um, yeah, I think we need a new library for that, really. You can assemble a multi-sig transaction using the Antelope library right now. It's just not super friendly. I get it. I get it. I think that if we're the ones that end up building that, our time frame is probably, it's not like a funded initiative or anything on our end. That it's outside of the scope of the roadmap. So we would be building it kind of when we needed it, unless somebody beats us to it. And I can imagine when we will need it is when we finally get to Unicove needing multi-sig capabilities. It's been on our roadmap for Unicove for a while now, both to provide a place where you can create MSIGs, as well as, like, when you create a MSIG and you want other people to sign it, the common pattern in the Antelope space has been you just share a URL to some sort of platform that gives them the opportunity to look at the MSIG and then like log in with their wallet and approve the MSIG. We want that functionality on Unicove, so you'd be able to, go to unicove.com/proposal/ and then whatever identifiers are required to load that proposal and let you approve it. We've had some prototypes of that for a while on Unicove, but now that we're going to be converting the entire Unicove code base over to using Wharf, as soon as we get back to that section, we'll probably run into the same need as everyone else for creating those MSIGs, and that for us would lead to when we would prioritize creating that. So obviously, if it were, I don't know, part of the roadmap or something else like that, we may prioritize that externally of Unicove, but working in Unicove, I think, will be our not-for-profit motive to actually build something like that. I would welcome anybody else that wants to get their hands dirty to build something reusable too, but kind of like I mentioned at the beginning of the call, we're going very much, GrayMass is going into a planning phase for 2024 over the first probably week or two of December. And that's just because this project's wrapping up and, we need to keep our team fed. So we're trying to figure out what that means for Anchor, for Unicove, for Wharf, for Robo, for all of the other products that we've kind of worked on over the years. Which of them can help sustain us? Which ones maybe we can pitch for some sort of public goods funding? And what sort of for-profit projects we could actually take on that would leverage Wharf and let us dog food all of this to build something that's not a utility, whether that be an application on chain or whether that be a game. Um, we're kind of exploring a ton of options and seeing where that goes. So, pirate game. Yes. Sorry, it's coming from chat. Be nice if Riverside embedded chat in chat. Or if I could pop it out. We'll get some inception going. There, now we can see chat multiple times in the recording. We do have some ideas, though. It's just a matter of figuring out how how to do it. Yeah, this is my lazy way to do it. I'm sure we can have some sort of overlay or something, but without engineering something, now we get to watch like the trippy highlighting kind of fade into infinity. Yeah, that feature we were talking about yesterday, it would need to be in Node.js, I think. We might be able to actually use a plugin to do that, but it would be really spammy on the APIs. One thing we do have, which could serve as the foundation of it, is these plugins. Um, we have these callback plugins that'll watch for finality. This could serve as like the basis for something like that, where instead of waiting finality, it waits for in block and then could do a callback afterwards. Because this is a little extreme, especially with like 3 minute finality that we have right now, or 2 or 3 minute, whatever it is. Yeah, but I think it would be possible to do that with the plugin architecture and with current Node.js. It would just be, it wouldn't be optimal, but that kind of is the way that we've seen things get prioritized in the ecosystem at times. Is we do it in a really inefficient way, and then we complain about how inefficient it is, but how awesome it is. And then eventually we can work in the efficiencies to create a better solution. So maybe that is a good candidate for something that could be built. I think probably encouraging return values is the most optimal. But and again, I think this is going to come up to, it's going to come up more heavily for our team when we get back to Unicove and we're integrating Wharf. Because like on our transfer page, whenever we finish a transfer, we then sit there and wait for the transaction to finalize and kind of keep track of that. But then we also are rechecking the user's balance, and we're doing all of that in Unicode right now. But with Wharf, like we're probably going to want a plugin that says, hey, when this transaction is in a block, let's call get account and update their balance, or get currency, or get table rows, or whatever the API call might be.
Which you can do now with the send transaction too, without any additional load on the client side.
It's true. That is another thing that we need to get into Wharf at some point. I know Denny from EOS Nation has been asking for that, is for the session kit to be able to use send transaction too, which is not possible right now.
Yeah, the problem with it is you get no progress update, so to speak, until it either like fails or it gets in block or whatever you specify in the send transaction.
And in the meantime, it just kind of hangs there, like it just sits there waiting until the send transaction to response comes back.
Do you now use like the get transaction status?
That finality plugin that I was just showing does use that. There's actually two of them. One of them that just notifies, and one of them that fires a callback.
Okay.
These plugins are really simple. I don't know if anybody's ever tried to write one. Those are the hooks. Oh, it's in a PR. That's why I'm not seeing anything. I don't think we've actually published this plugin. It was outside of the scope of the project, and so it kind of got set down. The plugin itself, let's just view the file. Wait for finality is a function. Yeah, it calls get transaction status, and then it waits for irreversibility. And then if it does not get irreversibility, it just waits 5 seconds and calls it again. So it's just this really simple loop. And then if it fails, there's some failure conditions. And then once it's finalized, it calls a callback to whatever callback is passed in.
But if you're already calling transaction status, or you have like how many blocks, so to speak, got confirmed on top of it, could we have like a plugin in general, like in the plugin architecture, that will be like kind of like how in Ethereum, or you do like dot on confirmations, and you get like basically update every block, so that if you want to add like some progress or something else, you could.
I think so. Doesn't look like we're actually returning anything here. Like we have the response and all we're doing is checking the state, but we're never passing the response back. I
You're
mean, I think
resolving the
that,
response once it's irreversible.
yeah, but to get status, I think we would probably just need to add something right here that then
Yeah.
processes the response and passes some sort of data back, that says, okay, it's in block, but you still have this much time remaining or something.
Yeah.
I think it's possible.
Like, or the transaction ID at least. Like that one, like I end up mostly just calculating it myself to have it
Yeah.
like ahead of time. We need to put it in like a log for the user or something.
Yeah, agreed. This is part of why I'm personally really excited to start like dog fooding all of this, is because like I'm gonna see those needs more firsthand. We've been so in the abstract over the last year, just building the raw code, that it's like, okay, it works, but does it work in practice? Now it's time to put it in practice ourselves, so that way we see all of this as well. Especially now that it's out of scope for the actual project, and we're moving into kind of this maintenance phase and trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah, I guess it could always be like this plugin, just looking at it, like it's just fixed at 5-second interval.
Mm-hmm.
Like it could be kind of like more dynamic, where you kind of know how many blocks got built on top, and you know when it will be irreversible, so to speak, and you check at more, um, like times when you believe you've reached that number, potentially more earlier, or what's the current status.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do think we need probably some guides on how to use these more effectively. The tutorial, now that we're using return values, is not going to do that. But that was one of the ideas to embed in the tutorial, was to like build a custom plugin and have the custom plugin be passed into the transact call, and then the plugin is part of the tutorial application. And it was going to reload the data once certain conditions were met. So you can do a lot with the plugin architecture, and you don't even need to write your own package. You can just pass in functions. It just has to be formatted the proper way to act as a plugin. So, but we do need to kind of highlight that and hopefully get people using those, because you can like essentially replicate this register function in your application and then add hooks, and then you can define whatever logic you want to occur at this point in the process. So like this one's an after broadcast hook.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of these types of improvements we could potentially make with applications, now that we can actually tap into these processes and use callback flows and all of this to make it so that applications feel more reactive, the user experience improves, and just in general, um, it's easier to build these applications. That was the whole goal for Wharf, and I think we've moved the needle forward a little bit.
Yeah, I'd say more than a little bit.
Yeah, probably. Cool. Well, I'm always happy to ramble, but I don't have anything specific to ramble about right now. Um, I guess I would highly recommend joining in kind of these Antelope developer roundtables that are going on. They happen every 2 weeks in Telegram on the Antelope Devs chat. So those will be a continuous stream of things where we'll continue to talk about stuff like this. Um, and then we will probably announce or at least talk about in Telegram what the plan for these call is moving forward at some point early next year. So yeah,
Just back to that question about
sure.
the like or an update through a plugin. Uh, is the plugin architecture expecting like a return of just one kind of promise to resolve, waiting for like one promise to resolve, or there's a way to potentially add multiple data and listen to like an event or something that could fire more than once? Excuse me.
Um, I'm trying to figure out how to answer that. The response from the plugin is telling the session kit to move on, but you could have it do whatever you want it to do, if that makes sense. Like it could
But it won't
call.
report back to the your like okay. I like for example, if you want to have the same plugin return, like okay, 5 blocks passed, 10 blocks passed, or what have you, and also return like irreversibility, because you'll need like something like a more like an event handler or something like on where you can expect multiple things versus just a promise that will resolve once.
Yes, this plugin was very much designed just to wait for finality, and that's why it's just doing the one thing. Um, the return itself, the resolution of the promise, it tells the plugin that it's done, but what it's doing while it's not done could be any number of things. It could be any type of logic that you wanted to create. It doesn't emit events natively or anything though. Um, the plugins themselves are talking to the web renderer and the session kit just for the transaction flow. So, but beyond those like required responses to move through the transact flow, they can do anything. There could be just kind of some sort of
But they
event
won't be able to
architecture built.
communicate with your app logic unless you return like almost like I guess an event listener or something.
If the plugin is part of your app, then the plugin could continuously talk to your application.
Okay,
So it's
gotta play
definitely,
around with it.
yeah, it's definitely possible. Um, and I think that'll probably be what a lot of applications can use for their own custom like hooks into these flows. Um, I know we're planning on doing that in a number of things on like for Unicove for example, like we'll be adding custom hooks that say perform this Unicode function after broadcast, and then it'll right after broadcast, it'll start that function, and then that function can do whatever it needs to within Unicove to push that forward.
Yeah, no, I see what you mean, because you can have your plugin itself emit events that you listen to, like a custom plugin,
Yep.
and and thus you get like additional data while you're reacting basically in a different piece of versus still waiting for that final response of the promise to move on to the next line in that specific code block.
Yep. And then like you could send messages to the web renderer too if you're using the web renderer as a user interface element to change what the default UI shows as well. Um, and then if you don't want to use the default UI, you could just use those custom events like you were talking about to update other UI elements. Like maybe there's like a little growl notification that pops up and counts down or updates regularly with status messages of some kind.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, and at least in this 1.0 version of everything, this will be the call patterns we have just for these plugins. But if we get to the point where we're like, okay, this design of the plugin architecture doesn't work, then maybe we can look at something for a 2.0 somewhere down the road that might be better than this. Like we can learn from how we use this one to build the next one. I'm not sure if I have any easily accessible examples of a minimum plugin that's not an object. Maybe the plugins folder. This is a class-based one, and you could always build a class-based one in your code base as well. Like this is just one that exists in our unit tests. I thought I had one that was just a function, but it might have gotten removed. Yep, it looks like it. All right, well, I don't have anything to show there then, sadly. Cool. Well, any other topics we want to kind of touch on today?
Is this the last official call?
Yeah, at least scheduled. We may bring them back at some other cadence, but the weekly scheduled one will be stopping today.
Well, congratulations, guys. It's been
Thanks.
Great effort.
Thanks.
And result, of course.
And thank you all for joining these. I mean, and participating in Telegram and trying it out and using it and breaking it and all of these good things, because it's really helped shape the project. So wouldn't be what it is today without all of us doing all of these things. So, and it'll continue to change with how we all use it moving forward. So definitely, I mean, it's a big open source project. We may be the code maintainers at the moment, but definitely open to collaboration and improvements on all of this. So that way we can all build better applications on this technology stack. All right. Well, if we don't have anything else, let's wrap this one up here. And once again, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron.